Dr. Lisa Park was having the best day of her scientific career. She sat in the research library of Survival Station Omega-7, surrounded by databases containing information about thousands of different worlds and species. As a xenobiologist, this was like being given access to every library in the universe. "Amy, come look at this," Lisa called out. Amy looked up from her own research station, where she had been studying galactic communication protocols. "What did you find?" "I've been going through the planetary classification system, trying to understand how they categorize different types of worlds. Look at these examples." Amy walked over and looked at Lisa's display screen. It showed a list of planets with their classifications and brief descriptions. Category 1. Paradise World, Lisa read. "Perfect climate, no predators, abundant resources, no natural disasters, only 3 known examples in the galaxy." "That sounds nice," Amy said. Category 2. Garden World, Lisa continued. "Stable climate, minimal predators, adequate resources, rare natural disasters. Common type, suitable for most species." That's what they classified Earth as. Right. Now look at this. Category 8. Deathworld. Extreme weather, dangerous predators, frequent natural disasters, hostile environment. Considered barely habitable. Amy frowned. That sounds more like Earth than Category 2. It gets worse. Category 12. Deathworld. Constant environmental threats, apex predators, deadly atmospheric conditions, frequent cataclysmic events. Theoretically, unsurvivable for intelligent life. "Lisa," Amy said slowly, "are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" Before Lisa could answer, Rick Santos walked into the library. He looked excited and slightly confused. "Ladies, you need to see what I found in the engineering databases," Rick said. "I've been looking at the technical specifications for survival equipment." "What kind of specifications?" Lisa asked. Rick activated a wall display. "Standard environmental suits for Category 2 worlds. Look at the protection ratings." The display showed a sleek, lightweight suit with minimal armor. The specifications listed protection against light rain, mild temperature variations, and small, non-aggressive wildlife. "That's it?" Amy asked. "That's their idea of survival gear?" "For Category 2 worlds, yes. Now look at this." Rick switched to a different image. "Standard environmental suits for Category 8 worlds. This suit looked like military armor. Heavy, plating, sealed life support systems, and built-in weapons. The specifications listed protection against acid rain, extreme temperatures, radiation, and large predatory creatures." "That looks like what the other species wore to our first exercise," Amy observed. "Exactly. They came dressed for a category. 8 Deathworld survival test. We came dressed for a camping trip." Lisa was pulling up more data. "Rick, what's the average lifespan for intelligent species from different world categories?" Rick consulted his engineering database. Category 1, Paradise Worlds. Average lifespan, 400 to 600 standard years. Category 2, Garden Worlds. 200 to 300 years. Category 8, Deathworlds. 80 to 120 years. "What's the human average lifespan?" Amy asked. "About 80 years, Lisa said, which matches Category 8 Deathworld species. The 3 humans looked at each other. A picture was starting to form. And it wasn't the picture they had been given about Earth. Troy Bennett and Kate Williams entered the library, both carrying data tablets and looking concerned. "We need to talk," Troy said. "I've been going through the military databases, and Kate's been looking at medical records." "What did you find?" Lisa asked. Kate sat down heavily. I've been comparing human physiology to other galactic species. We're not normal. How not normal? Rick asked. Our bone density is 40% higher than average. Our muscle efficiency is off the charts. Our healing rate is 3 times faster than typical for our size category. Troy nodded grimly. And our reaction times are comparable to species that evolved specifically for combat. Our situational awareness scores match military-trained individuals from warrior species. That's not all, Kate continued. Our immune systems are incredibly robust. We can survive exposure to pathogens that would kill most galactic species within hours. And our diet, Troy added. Most intelligent species are herbivores or omnivores with very specific dietary requirements. We can eat almost anything organic and extract nutrition from it. Lisa was typing rapidly at her research station. I'm cross-referencing human characteristics with the planetary classification system. Data flowed across her screen. Atmospheric tolerance, temperature range, pressure adaptation, radiation resistance, toxin immunity. Oh my, Lisa said quietly. What? Amy asked. According to this classification system, humans show all the characteristics of a species that evolved on a Class 12 death world. The library was very quiet for a moment, but the survey classified Earth as Category 2, Rick said. Lisa pulled up the original survey data. Automated Survey Probe 7743 Delta. Observational period. 6 local months. Location. North American continent. Temperate zone. During a period of unusual climatic stability. Unusual climatic stability? Kate asked. The probe happened to observe Earth during one of the calmest 6-month periods in recent geological history. No major storms, no volcanic activity, no significant earthquakes, no disease outbreaks. Amy was reading over Lisa's shoulder. It also observed during late spring and early summer in a temperate zone. The probe completely missed winter, hurricane season, tornado season, and fire season. And it only observed one continent, Troy added. It missed the monsoons in Asia, the cyclones in Australia, the volcanic activity in the Pacific Ring of Fire, and the seasonal flooding in Africa. Rick laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. So they classified our entire planet based on 6 months of nice weather in one of the safest places on Earth during one of the calmest periods in recent history. It gets worse, Lisa said, pulling up more data. The probe's biological sensors detected cattle, sheep, and horses. So, it classified them as large domesticated herbivores and assumed they were representative of local wildlife. Kate shook her head. The probe missed bears, wolves, tigers, sharks, venomous snakes, poisonous spiders, and about 1 million other things that can kill you. It also missed bacteria, viruses, parasites, and fungi, Lisa added, plus toxic plants, dangerous weather, patterns, and geological instability. Amy was doing calculations on her tablet. Lisa, what would Earth's classification be if the survey had been done properly? Lisa fed the correct data into the classification system. She stared at the result for a long moment. Class 15. Deathworld, she said quietly. Class 15? Rick asked. I thought 12 was the highest category. Apparently not. Class 15 is described as unsurvivable by any known form of intelligent life. Environmental conditions exceed maximum tolerance for organized civilization. Recommend complete avoidance. The 6 humans sat in the library absorbing this information. So, Troy said, we're from a planet so dangerous that the galactic community didn't think intelligent life could exist there. And when we showed up for basic safety training, Kate added, They gave us the most difficult survival course in the galaxy because they thought we were delicate creatures from a peaceful world. And we accidentally proved that we're actually from a nightmare world that makes their worst training scenarios look like vacation resorts, Amy concluded. Lisa was still staring at her data. There's more. I'm looking at the survival characteristics for Class 15 Deathworld species. Theoretical projections only, since no such species has ever been observed. What kind of characteristics? Rick asked. Extreme adaptability, ability to cooperate under stress, advanced problem-solving skills, rapid technology development, strong social bonding across genetic lines. That sounds like humans, Amy said, highly aggressive when threatened, but capable of forming alliances with other species, natural tendency to improve rather than abandon hostile environments. Definitely sounds like humans, Troy said. And this is the interesting part, Lisa continued. The theoretical analysis suggests that Class 15 Deathworld species would be the ideal candidates for galactic emergency response, hostile environment, exploration, and first contact with unknown civilizations. Kate smiled. Because we're already used to dealing with impossible situations. The problem is, Lisa said, everyone is going to be terrified of us once they realize what we actually are. Rick stood up and stretched. Maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. Respect through strength isn't the worst foundation for diplomacy. Amy was already thinking ahead. We need to tell the others, and we need to figure out how to break this news to the galactic community. Troy nodded. And we need to make sure Earth knows what they're dealing with out here. If other species are going to be scared of us, we need to be prepared for that. Lisa saved her research and stood up. First, let's go find Instructor Zeltar. I think he deserves to know the truth about what they accidentally invited to their survival training. How do you think he'll react? Kate asked. Probably the same way we'd react if we found out we'd accidentally invited Godzilla to a summer camp, Amy said. As they walked out of the library, Rick had one more thought. You know what the really funny part is? What? Lisa asked. Jake Martinez stepped off the transport ship and felt his stomach drop. The docking bay of the Stellar Dawn was huge. It was bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth. The ceiling stretched so high above him that he could barely see. Alien beings moved around him like he was invisible. A massive creature with gray skin like stone walked past him. Its footsteps made the metal floor shake. Jake had to step back to avoid being knocked over. The creature did not even look at him. To his left, a being that looked like a giant cat with blue fur glided past. It moved so fast that Jake only saw a blur. Jake picked up his small bag and looked around. He was supposed to find Commander Vex. That was all the information he had. Find Commander Vex and report for duty. He had no idea what Commander Vex looked like. He had no idea where to go. You must be the human, a voice said behind him. Jake turned around. A tall creature stood there. It looked like a lizard that had learned to walk on two legs. Its scales were dark green and its eyes were yellow. Sharp teeth showed when it spoke. This had to be Commander Vex. Yes, sir, Jake said. Jake Martinez reporting for duty. Commander Vex looked down at a tablet in his clawed hands. His yellow eyes moved back and forth as he read. Jake could see his reflection in those eyes. He looked very small. Human, Commander Vex said slowly. I have read your file. Your species is new to the galaxy. Very new. You only learned to travel between stars a few years ago. Yes, sir. And now you think you can train with the best warriors in the galaxy? Jake felt his face get hot. "I want to try, sir." Commander Vex made a sound that might have been laughter. It sounded more like a growl. "We will see about that. Follow me." They walked through the corridors of the ship. Jake had to take 2 steps for every one of Commander Vex's steps. The walls were covered with pictures and symbols from different worlds. Jake recognized some of them from his studies, but most were completely new. Other cadets walked through the halls. Jake saw more of the stone-skinned giants. He saw more of the cat-like beings. There were creatures that looked like walking trees. Others had multiple arms and legs. Some floated in the air without touching the ground. All of them were bigger than Jake. All of them looked stronger than Jake. Many of them stopped to stare at him as he walked past. He heard whispers in languages he did not understand. "That is, a granite warrior," Commander Vex said, pointing to one of the stone creatures. "They can lift a vehicle with their bare hands. They can punch through solid metal. Their skin is harder than most armor." Jake nodded. He had read about granite warriors in his preparation files. "Those are Zephyrians," Commander Vex continued, pointing to the cat-like beings. "They can run faster than your human vehicles. They can jump higher than your tallest buildings. In their home world, they hunt creatures that would tear you apart in seconds." More nodding from Jake. More feelings of being very small. They passed a group of insect-like creatures working together. They moved in perfect timing, like they were all controlled by the same mind. "Hive-born," Commander Vex explained. "They share thoughts with each other. They never make mistakes because they all think as one. They coordinate better than any other species in the galaxy." They reached a large room filled with exercise equipment. Jake had never seen machines so big. Everything was built for beings much larger and stronger than humans. "Here," Commander Vex said, handing Jake a tablet. "These are your test results from Earth. Show me how a human measures up." Jake looked at the numbers on the tablet. His strength scores, his speed times, his endurance ratings. They all seemed so small compared to what he had just seen. A granite warrior was using a machine nearby. The weight display showed numbers that made Jake's eyes widen. The creature was lifting more than Jake could even imagine moving. "Well?" Commander Vex asked. Jake walked over to a smaller machine. He set it to his maximum weight and began lifting. Around him, other cadets stopped their exercises to watch. Jake could feel their eyes on him. He could hear them talking quietly. The weight felt heavy in his hands. He managed 10 lifts before his arms started to shake. When he finished, he looked at the display. His score was less than half of what the weakest alien in the room could do. A Zephyrian cadet laughed. It was a sound like wind chimes, but Jake could tell it was not friendly. Other cadets joined in. Jake felt his face turn red again. "Interesting," Commander Vex said. "And your speed?" Jake moved to a running track. The machine measured how fast he could run. Again, cadets gathered to watch. Again, Jake felt very small. He ran as fast as he could. His lungs burned. His legs felt like they were on fire. When he finished, the display showed his time. A Zephyrian cadet had just run the same distance in half the time. "And endurance?" Commander Vex asked. The endurance test was worse. Jake managed to keep going longer than he had expected, but several alien cadets had already been running for hours. They showed no signs of getting tired. When Jake finally stopped, he was breathing hard. Sweat covered his face. His legs felt like water. Around him, the alien cadets looked like they had barely started exercising. "As I thought," Commander Vex said, making notes on his tablet. "Human. You are the weakest cadet in this academy. You are the slowest cadet in this academy. Your natural abilities are disappointing. Jake wiped sweat from his face. Yes, sir. So, tell me, human, why are you here? What makes you think you belong with warriors like these? Jake looked around the room. Every alien cadet was watching him. Some looked amused. Others looked puzzled. A few looked annoyed, like he was wasting their time. I want to learn, sir, Jake said. I want to get better. Commander Vex stared at him for a long moment. Learn? Get better? Human, these cadets were born better. They do not need to learn to be strong. They do not need to learn to be fast. They simply are. Then I'll have to find another way, Jake said. Commander Vex made that growling laugh sound again. Another way? What other way could there be? Jake did not have an answer for that. Not yet. But he knew there had to be one. Humans had not come this far by being the strongest or the fastest. They had come this far by being something else. He just had to figure out what that something else was. Report to quarters level 7, Commander Vex said. You will room with the other human. Perhaps he can explain to you how little hope you have here. Jake picked up his bag and walked toward the exit. Behind him, he could hear the alien cadets talking about him. He could not understand their words, but he understood their tone. They thought he was a joke. Maybe they were right. Maybe he was too weak for this place. Maybe humans did not belong among the warriors of the galaxy. But Jake had come too far to give up now. Somehow, some way, he was going to prove that being human meant something more than just being weak. Jake found his room on level 7. The door was smaller than the others he had seen, which made him feel a little better. When he pressed the entry button, the door slid open to show another human sitting on one of the beds. You must be Jake, the other human said. He looked tired. His uniform was wrinkled and there was a bruise on his left cheek. I'm Ben Torres. Welcome to paradise. Ben did not sound like he meant it was paradise. Rough day? Jake asked, putting his bag on the empty bed. Every day is rough here, Ben said. Wait until you meet your classmates. Really meet them, I mean. The tests you did today were just the warm-up. Jake sat down on his bed. The room was small but clean. There were 2 beds, 2 desks, and a small bathroom. Everything was built for humans, which felt strange after seeing the rest of the ship. How long have you been here? Jake asked. 3 weeks, Ben said. 3 very long weeks. I've learned a lot about what it means to be human in a galaxy full of super beings. Such as? Ben laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Such as we're the entertainment. The other cadets think we're funny, like pets that learn to walk on 2 legs. Jake lay back on his bed and stared at the ceiling. It can't be that bad. Wait until tomorrow, Ben said. Full physical assessments. Every cadet gets tested on everything. Strength, speed, agility, endurance, reflexes, natural armor, sensory abilities, everything that matters for military service. And we fail everything? Worse than fail, we don't even register on most of the tests. The machines are built for real warriors, not humans. The next morning came too early. Jake and Ben joined a large group of cadets in the main assessment hall. The room was enormous, filled with strange machines and testing equipment. Instructors from different species stood at various stations. Jake recognized some of the alien types from yesterday. Granite warriors stood like moving mountains. Zephyrians moved like liquid lightning. The insect-like hive-born clustered together in perfect formations. There were others, too, beings made of what looked like living metal, creatures that seemed to be made of energy instead of matter, things that might have been plants or animals or something else entirely. "Cadets!" Commander Vex's voice boomed across the hall. "Today you will be tested on all abilities relevant to military service. Each test is graded on a galactic standard. Your scores will determine your placement in advanced training programs." Lieutenant Zara, the cat-like Nexari instructor, stepped forward. Her blue fur gleamed under the lights. "We will begin with strength assessments. Granite Warriors, you are first." Jake watched as the stone-skinned giants approached the strength testing station. The machine looked like it could measure the power of a spaceship engine. The first granite. Warrior placed his hands on the grips and began to push. The numbers on the display climbed higher and higher. Other cadets gathered around to watch. When the test ended, the Granite Warrior had scored over 8,000 points. "Excellent," Lieutenant Zara said, marking her tablet. "Next." More Granite Warriors took their turns. All of them scored between 7,000 and 9,000 points. The crowd of watching cadets made impressed sounds. Zephyrians, Lieutenant Zara, called, "Your turn." The cat-like beings approached a different station. This one tested speed and agility. Jake watched as they moved through an obstacle course so fast they were almost invisible. Their scores ranged from 6,000 to 8,000 points. Other species took their turns. The plant-like beings scored high on endurance. The energy creatures excelled at sensory tests. The metal beings dominated the natural armor assessments. "Humans," Lieutenant Zara called. Jake felt every eye in the room turn toward him and Ben. They walked to the strength station together. Jake could hear whispers starting among the alien cadets. "What do you think they'll score?" a Zephyrian asked. "Maybe 100 points?" another replied. "I bet they can't even move the machine," a Granite Warrior rumbled. Jake placed his hands on the grips and pushed with everything he had. His muscles strained, his face turned red. The numbers on the display slowly climbed upward. 50 points, 100, 150, 200. At 230 points, Jake could not push anymore. He stepped back, breathing hard. The room was completely silent. Lieutenant Zara looked at her tablet and then at the machine display. She seemed confused. 230 points, she announced. Someone laughed. Then someone else. Soon half the room was laughing. Jake felt his face burn with embarrassment. "My baby sister could score higher than that," a Granite Warrior said. "Are you sure the machine is working?" a Zephyrian asked. Ben's turn was even worse. He managed only 190 points. The laughter got louder. The speed test was a disaster. Jake ran as fast as he could, but his time was slower than the worst Zephyrian's walking pace. Ben did slightly better, but not by much. "This is embarrassing," Lieutenant Zara muttered, making notes. "I've never seen scores so low." The endurance test surprised everyone a little. Jake and Ben kept going longer than expected. They outlasted some of the stronger species, but their pace was so slow that their overall scores were still terrible. "At least they're persistent," one instructor said to another. "Like parasites," came the reply. The sensory tests were another failure. Humans had decent eyesight and hearing, but nothing compared to species that had evolved to hunt or avoid being hunted. Jake could not see the targets that Nexari cadets spotted easily. He could not hear the sounds that others detected without effort. The natural armor test was almost insulting. The machine was designed to measure how much damage a being could absorb. Granite Warriors could withstand impacts that would destroy vehicles. Hiveborn had shells that deflected energy weapons. When Jake stood in front of the testing beam, it barely registered his presence. His skin might as well have been paper. 0 points, the machine announced. No natural armor detected. By the end of the day, Jake and Ben had the lowest scores in every category. Not just low scores. Scores so low that some of the instructors questioned whether the tests had been administered correctly. Perhaps there was an equipment malfunction, Lieutenant Zara suggested to Commander Vex. No malfunction, Commander Vex replied, looking at his tablet. Humans are simply inadequate for military service. Jake sat in the cadet common area that evening, staring at his scores. Around him, alien cadets celebrated their achievements. Granite warriors compared strength numbers. Zephyrians raced each other around the room for fun. "Hey, human," a granite warrior called Thok approached their table. "I heard about your test scores. 200 points? My grandmother could beat that." "Yeah," said a Zephyrian named Kessatar. "And she could do it while taking a nap." Other cadets gathered around, not to be mean exactly. More like they were looking at something curious. Like humans were an interesting mistake. "What I don't understand," said a hive-born called Zek, "is why your species was accepted into the academy at all. What military value could you possibly have?" Jake did not have a good answer. Looking at the numbers, it was hard to argue with them. Humans really were weak compared to everyone else here. "Maybe we're supposed to be the comic relief," Ben said bitterly. "Actually," said a voice from behind them, "you might be surprised." Everyone turned to see Lieutenant Zara approaching their table. The Nexari instructor sat down across from Jake and Ben. "I've been looking at your test results more carefully," she said. "There's something interesting about your performance." "Our terrible performance?" Jake asked. "Your adaptable performance," Lieutenant Zara corrected. "Every other species here excels in specific areas based on their evolution. Granite warriors are strong. Zephyrians are fast. Hive-born are coordinated, but they are also limited by those same evolutionary advantages." She pulled out her tablet and showed them a graph. "Look at this. Your scores improved during each test. Not by much, but they improved. Every other species performed at exactly their expected level from start to finish." Jake looked at the graph. She was right. His strength had increased slightly between his first and final attempts. His speed had gotten marginally better. His performance on every test showed a small upward trend. "So what?" Kessatar asked. "They're still the weakest cadets here." "Yes," Lieutenant Zara agreed. "But they're also the only cadets who got better. During testing, everyone else stayed exactly the same." She stood up and looked around at the gathered cadets. "It makes me wonder what might happen if they had time to actually train." After she left, the alien cadets drifted away, still talking about the strange humans and their pitiful test scores. Jake and Ben sat alone at their table. "Do you think she's right?" Ben asked. "Do you think we could actually get better?" Jake looked around the room at all the superior beings surrounding them. "I don't know, but I know one thing." "What's that?" "We're already here. We might as well find out." 3 weeks passed slowly for Jake. Every day brought new lessons about how much stronger, faster, and better equipped his alien classmates were. Physical training sessions left him exhausted, while others barely seemed to notice the exercise. Academic classes covered topics that came naturally to species with enhanced senses or shared consciousness, but required intense focus for humans to understand. But Jake noticed something that others did not. While his alien classmates relied on their natural abilities, he was learning to think differently. When a granite warrior could not lift a particular weight, they simply accepted it as beyond their limits. When Jake could not lift something, he studied the problem and tried different approaches. Ben was changing too. The bruises on his face had healed, but his eyes had gotten sharper. He watched everything and everyone, taking mental notes about how different species moved and fought. "You're both adapting," Lieutenant Zara told them after a particularly difficult training session. "Not physically. Mentally. That's something we don't often see here." The morning of the announcement started like any other. Jake and Ben joined the stream of cadets heading to the main assembly hall. The massive room could hold thousands of beings, and today it was nearly full. Cadets from dozens of species filled the curved rows of seats. Commander Vex stood at the front of the hall, his yellow eyes scanning the crowd. Behind him, other instructors formed a line. Jake spotted Lieutenant Zara among them, along with several human instructors he had not met yet. "Cadets," Commander Vex began, his voice carrying easily through the hall. "You have completed your basic training phase. You have been tested on individual capabilities. You have learned basic military protocols and procedures." Murmurs of excitement rippled through the alien cadets. Jake could sense their anticipation. "Today begins the next phase of your education," Commander Vex continued. "Combat training." The reaction was immediate. Granite warriors banged their fists on their knees in approval. Zephyrians made excited chirping sounds. Hiveborn clicked their mandibles in unison. Other species showed their enthusiasm in ways Jake did not recognize. "During combat training, you will learn real warfare," Commander Vex explained. "Not exercises, not simulations, real techniques for real battles against real enemies." Thok, the massive granite warrior, leaned forward in his seat. "Finally," he rumbled. "Time to show what we can really do." Kessatar stretched his sleek limbs. "Combat training is where speed and reflexes matter most. This should be interesting." Zek conferred rapidly with the other Hive-born cadets. Their ability to share thoughts made them formidable in any group activity. Jake noticed that the human instructors were exchanging glances, not worried glances, knowing glances, like they were sharing a secret. "Your combat instructors will teach you everything you need to know," Commander Vex said. "But remember, combat is not about individual strength alone. It requires many different skills." He stepped aside, and a human instructor moved forward. She was older than Lieutenant Zara, with gray hair and scars on her hands. Her uniform bore rank insignia that Jake recognized as Master Sergeant. "I am Master Sergeant Lisa Gray," she announced. Her voice was not as loud as Commander Vex's, but it carried clearly through the hall. "I will be your primary combat instructor." Some of the alien cadets looked surprised. A human instructor for combat training, the species that had scored lowest on every physical test? "Combat training covers several areas," Master Sergeant Gray continued. "Individual fighting techniques, weapons training, tactical thinking, team coordination, psychological preparation." She walked along the front of the hall as she spoke. "Some of you are thinking that your natural advantages will make combat training easy. You are wrong." Kessatar's ears twitched. "What could a human possibly teach us about combat? We've seen how weak your species is." Master Sergeant Gray smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Would you like to demonstrate, Cadet Kessatar?" "Demonstrate what?" "Your natural combat abilities. Come down here." Kessatar glanced around at his fellow Zephyrians. They nodded encouragingly. He stood up and moved to the front of the hall with fluid grace. "Show us your combat stance," Master Sergeant Gray said. Kessatar dropped into a low crouch. His muscles coiled like springs ready to release, his claws extended slightly. He looked dangerous and ready to strike. "Very good," Master Sergeant Gray said. "Now attack me." The hall fell silent. A human instructor asking a Zephyrian to attack her? It seemed like suicide. "Are you sure?" Kessatar asked. "I'm sure." Kessatar moved faster than Jake could follow. One moment he was crouched 5 feet away from Master Sergeant Gray. The next moment he was flying through the air toward her, claws extended. Master Sergeant Gray stepped to the side. It was a small movement, perfectly timed. Kessatar shot past her and hit the wall behind where she had been standing. "Again," she said calmly. Kessatar got up looking confused and angry. He attacked again, even faster this time. Again, Master Sergeant Gray simply moved out of the way. This time she added a small push as Kessatar went past. He tumbled across the floor. "One more time," Master Sergeant Gray said. The third attack was the fastest yet. Kessatar came at her from a different angle, trying to compensate for her movements. This time, Master Sergeant Gray did not just dodge. She grabbed Kessatar's arm as he went past and used his own momentum to throw him to the ground. Kessatar landed hard and did not get up immediately. "Speed is useless without control," Master Sergeant Gray explained to the silent hall. "Strength is useless without technique. Natural advantages are useless without understanding how to use them properly." She helped Kessatar to his feet. He was not injured, but his pride was clearly hurt. "Cadet Thok," Master Sergeant Gray called. "Your turn." The massive granite warrior stood up slowly. "What do you want me to do?" "Try to grab me." Thok laughed. "That doesn't seem fair. I might hurt." "You try." Thok moved forward with surprising speed for such a large being. His arms spread wide to catch Master Sergeant Gray in a bear hug that would crush most opponents. Master Sergeant Gray dropped to the ground and swept Thok's legs. The granite warrior crashed to the floor like a falling building. The impact shook the entire hall. "Strength is useless if you can't reach your target," Master Sergeant Gray said, helping Thok up. She looked around the hall at the shocked faces of the alien cadets. Combat is not about having the best natural abilities. Combat is about using whatever abilities you have in the smartest way possible. A hive-born cadet raised a multi-jointed arm. "What about coordination? Surely our perfect teamwork gives us an advantage?" "Coordination is excellent," Master Sergeant Gray agreed. "But predictable coordination can be exploited. Perfect teamwork can become a weakness if your enemies understand your patterns." She walked back to the center of the hall. "Over the next several weeks, you will learn that successful combat requires more than physical gifts. It requires adaptability. It requires creativity. It requires the ability to think under pressure." Jake felt a strange sensation in his chest. For the first time since arriving at the academy, he did not feel completely outmatched. Some of you will discover that your greatest strengths can become weaknesses if you rely on them too heavily, Master Sergeant Gray continued. Others will discover that apparent weaknesses can be turned into advantages with the right approach. Commander Vex stepped forward again. "Combat training begins tomorrow morning. You will be divided into mixed species groups for most exercises. Learn from each other, challenge each other, and remember that in real combat, victory goes to those who can adapt, not necessarily to those who are naturally strongest." As the assembly ended and cadets began filing out of the hall, Jake overheard conversations around him. "How did that human move so fast?" a Zephyrian was asking. "She didn't move fast," another replied. "She moved smart." Did you see how she used Thok's own weight against him? A granite warrior said. I never thought of that. Ben nudged Jake as they walked toward the exit. Did you notice something? What? The human instructors weren't surprised by any of this. They knew exactly what was going to happen. Jake thought about that. Maybe they've done this before. Or maybe, Ben said quietly, they know something about combat that the rest of the galaxy hasn't learned yet. As they left the assembly hall, Jake felt something he had not felt since arriving at the academy. Hope. Maybe humans were not naturally strong or fast. Maybe they could not share thoughts or grow natural armor. But maybe, just maybe, that did not matter as much as everyone thought. Master Sergeant Gray's words echoed in his mind. Combat is about using whatever abilities you have in the smartest way possible. Jake was ready to find out what human abilities could do when used smartly. The sparring gymnasium was the largest room Jake had seen on the ship. Thick mats covered the floor. Protective barriers separated different fighting areas. Medical stations stood ready along the walls. The ceiling was high enough to accommodate flying species, and the walls were reinforced to withstand serious impacts. Today you begin practical combat training, Master Sergeant Gray announced to the assembled cadets. Individual sparring matches. Each of you will fight opponents from different species to learn how various natural abilities work in combat. Jake felt his stomach tighten. He had been dreading this moment since combat training began. All the military history and tactical theory in the galaxy would not help him when he had to actually fight aliens who were stronger, faster, and better equipped than humans. Matches will be limited contact, Master Sergeant Gray continued. No serious injuries are permitted. Fights end when one opponent yields, is knocked unconscious, or is judged unable to continue by the referees. She gestured to several instructor stations around the room. You will fight multiple rounds against different opponents. The goal is not to win every match. The goal is to learn from every match. The cadets were divided into groups by size and experience level. Jake found himself grouped with opponents who were considered beginners like himself. This did not make him feel much better, since even the weakest alien cadets had scored far higher than humans on physical assessments. Martinez, an instructor, called. You're up first, ring 3. Jake walked to the designated fighting area. His opponent was already waiting, Kestar, the Zephyrian who had been embarrassed by Master Sergeant Gray's demonstration. Kestar stretched his sleek limbs and extended his claws slightly. Try to make this interesting, human. Jake settled into the basic fighting stance he had learned during preparatory training on Earth. It felt completely inadequate compared to Kessatar's natural predatory posture. Begin, the referee announced. Kessatar moved like lightning. One moment, he was standing 5 feet away. The next moment, he was in front of Jake, claws reaching for his chest. Jake barely managed to step backward and avoid the strike. The Zephyrian pressed his attack immediately. His movements were fluid and impossibly fast. Jake tried to block, but Kessatar's strikes came from multiple angles simultaneously. A claw caught Jake's shoulder and tore through his training uniform. Jake stumbled backward, already breathing hard. Kessatar had barely started fighting and was not even winded. Come on, human, Kessatar taunted. Fight back! Jake tried to throw a punch, but Kessatar was no longer where Jake was aiming. The Zephyrian had moved to the side and was already launching another attack. This time his claws caught Jake's ribs, leaving shallow cuts. The fight continued for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Jake could not land a single blow. Kessatar was simply too fast. Every time Jake tried to attack, The Zephyrian was somewhere else. Every time Jake tried to defend, Kessatar found an opening. Finally, Jake's legs gave out from exhaustion. He fell to one knee, gasping for breath. Blood seeped through his torn uniform from multiple cuts. "Yield!" the referee called. "Match to Kessatar!" Jake struggled to his feet and walked to the medical station. A Nexari medic quickly treated his wounds with advanced healing gel. The cuts sealed themselves and the pain faded, but Jake's pride remained deeply bruised. "Next match," the instructor called. "Martinez versus Thok." Jake's heart sank. If he could not handle Kessatar's speed, how could he possibly survive against a granite warrior's strength? Thok approached the fighting ring like a walking mountain. His stone-like skin made him look more like a statue than a living being. His hands were larger than Jake's head. "I will try not to hurt you too badly," Thok rumbled. "Begin," the referee announced. This time, Jake did not wait for his opponent to attack first. He rushed forward, hoping to use speed and surprise against the larger opponent. It was like running into a wall. Thok simply stood still and let Jake hit him. Jake's punches had no effect whatsoever on the granite warrior's stone-hard skin. It was like punching solid rock. Thok reached out with one massive hand and grabbed Jake's arm. There was no malice in his action, just casual demonstration of superior strength. He lifted Jake off the ground with one hand and held him at arm's length. "Do you yield?" Thok asked politely. Jake tried to break free, but it was hopeless. Thok's grip was like a mechanical clamp. Jake could not even make him budge. "Yield!" Jake gasped. Thok set him down gently. "You fought bravely for such a small being." The third match was against Zek, one of the Hive-born. Jake hoped this might go better since the insect-like beings were not individually as strong as granite warriors or as fast as Zephyrians. He was wrong. Zek fought with perfect coordination and timing. Every movement was precise and calculated. The Hive-born seemed to anticipate Jake's actions before Jake himself knew what he was going to do. When Jake attacked, Zek was already moving to counter. When Jake tried to defend, Zek struck from unexpected angles. The match ended with Jake on the ground again, pinned by holds that he could not escape from. "Yield," he said for the third time. By the end of the training session, Jake had fought 6 different opponents from 5 different species. He had lost every single match. He had not managed to land a meaningful blow on any opponent. He had been knocked down, thrown, pinned, and defeated in every possible way. As he sat in the medical station getting his latest set of cuts and bruises treated, Jake felt completely defeated. Ben was at the next medical station looking equally battered. "Rough day?" Ben asked. "The worst," Jake replied. "I couldn't do anything against any of them. It wasn't even close." "Same here. I think I lasted about 30 seconds against a Nexari." She moved like smoke. Master Sergeant Gray approached their medical stations. "How are you feeling?" "Like failures," Jake said honestly. "Interesting," Master Sergeant Gray said, consulting her tablet. "Your performance improved during each match." Jake stared at her. "I lost every fight." "Yes, but look at the details." She showed him her notes. "First match against Kessatar. You lasted 2 minutes and 37 seconds. Second match against another Zephyrian. 3 minutes and 15 seconds. By your final match against a Zephyrian, you lasted over 4 minutes. She flipped through more data. Against Granite Warriors, you went from being pinned in 45 seconds to lasting nearly 2 minutes. Against Hive-born, you learned to anticipate their coordination patterns and forced them to work harder for their victories. Jake looked at the numbers. "But I still lost everything." Of course you lost, Master Sergeant Gray said. You're fighting opponents with significant natural advantages, but you're also learning, adapting, getting better. She pointed to data from other cadets. Look at these scores. Kessitar performed exactly the same in every match. His speed and reflexes never changed. Thok's strength was identical from first fight to last. Zek's coordination remained constant. Jake studied the charts. She was right. The alien cadets had performed at exactly their expected levels throughout the day. You and Ben are the only cadets whose performance improved during training, Master Sergeant Gray continued. Everyone else fought to their natural capabilities and stopped there. You two kept getting better. Better at losing, Ben muttered. Better at learning. Master, Sergeant Gray corrected. In your last few matches, I saw you starting to predict your opponent's attacks. You were adapting to their fighting styles. You were finding small ways to make them work harder for their victories. She closed her tablet and looked at both humans. Seriously. Most species fight the way their evolution taught them to fight. They use their natural gifts and assume that's enough. But humans have something different. What's that? Jake asked. Humans learn from pain. Other species avoid pain or accept it as a natural limit. Humans analyze pain, learn from it, and use that knowledge to perform better next time. Jake thought about his matches. It was true that he had started to recognize patterns in his opponent's attacks. He had begun to anticipate certain moves. He had found tiny openings that he might be able to exploit with more practice. The question, Master Sergeant Gray said, is whether you're willing to keep learning through losing or whether you'll give up because winning seems impossible. Jake looked around the gymnasium. Alien cadets were celebrating their victories and nursing their minor injuries. They looked confident and satisfied with their natural abilities. But Jake noticed something else. Several alien cadets were watching him and Ben with curious expressions. Not mocking expressions, curious ones. What are they thinking about? Jake asked, nodding toward the observers. Master Sergeant Gray smiled. They're wondering why you kept fighting even when you knew you couldn't win. They're wondering why you got harder to defeat as the matches went on. They're wondering what kind of beings keep getting back up no matter how many times they're knocked down. She gathered her equipment and prepared to leave. Tomorrow we continue sparring. More opponents, longer matches. Are you ready for more losing? Jake stood up from the medical station. His body hurt, but his mind was working. I think I'm ready for more learning. Good answer, Master Sergeant Gray said. Pain is temporary, knowledge is permanent, and humans are very good at turning knowledge into victory, given enough time. 2 weeks of individual sparring had left Jake covered in bruises, but also filled with knowledge. He still lost most of his matches, but now he was lasting longer against each opponent type. More importantly, he was starting to win occasional matches against cadets who relied too heavily on their natural gifts without developing technique. Today we move to team exercises, Master Sergeant Gray announced to the assembled cadets. Individual combat skills are important, but modern warfare is fought by coordinated units, not lone warriors. She gestured to a large tactical display showing various team formations. You will be divided into 5-member squads with mixed species composition. Your success will depend on how well you work together, not how strong any individual member is. Jake felt his stomach tighten again. If he was barely holding his own in individual fights, how would he contribute to a team? Squad assignments are posted on the display, Master Sergeant Gray continued. Find your team members and report to your designated training area. Jake searched the list until he found his name. Squad 7, Jake Martinez, Ben Torres, Kessatar, Thok, and Vlix. He recognized all the names except Vlix. Ben appeared beside him. Looks like we're together. That's something, at least. Yeah, but look at the rest of our squad, Jake said. Kessatar and Thok are two of the strongest individual fighters in our class. And Vlix is a Nexari, Ben added, having spotted their 5th member. The stealth and agility specialists. Jake saw Vlix approaching and was surprised by how nervous the cat-like being looked. Most Nexari moved with fluid confidence, but Vlix seemed hesitant and uncertain. You must be the humans, Vlix said quietly. I'm Vlix. I'm not very good at fighting. Before Jake could respond, Kessatar and Thok arrived. Wonderful, Kessatar said, looking at the human members of his squad. We're stuck with the weakest cadets, in the academy, and a nervous Nexari, Thok added, though his tone was more sympathetic than mean. No offense, Vlix. None taken, Vlix said, ears drooping. It's true. I'm not like other Nexari. I'm not fast or graceful. I freeze up in fights. Master Sergeant Gray approached their group. Squad 7, report to Training Area C. Your first exercise is Urban Warfare Simulation. They walked to the designated area, which turned out to be a complex maze of artificial buildings and obstacles. It looked like a miniature city with multiple levels, narrow alleys, and hidden passages. Your objective, an instructor explained, is to capture 3 strategic points within the simulation area and hold them for 10 minutes while being attacked by automated defense systems and rival squads. Jake studied the tactical map they were given. The 3 objectives were spread across the simulation area. One was on high ground with good visibility but little cover. Another was in a narrow alley that would be easy to defend but hard to escape from. The third was in an open plaza surrounded by multiple approach routes. So what's our strategy? Kessatar asked, clearly expecting to take command. We split up, Thok suggested. Each of us takes a different area based on our strengths. That might not work, Jake said quietly. What do you mean? Kessatar demanded. Jake pointed to the map. If we split up, we can't support each other. Any rival squad that concentrates their forces can overwhelm our isolated members one at a time. The human has a point, Vlix said unexpectedly. Nexari. Tactics emphasize the importance of escape routes and mutual support. But we need to cover all 3 objectives, Thok pointed out. Not necessarily at the same time, Ben said, studying the map more closely. What if we take them in sequence and then defend the final positions? Jake felt his mind starting to work through the problem systematically. Look at the terrain. If we control the high ground position, we can provide overwatch for the other 2 areas. From there, Kessatar's speed could let him move quickly between positions as needed. And Thok's strength would be perfect for holding the narrow alley, Ben added. Once he's in position there, it would take a lot of force to dig him out. What about the plaza? Vlix asked. That's the trickiest one, Jake admitted. It's exposed from multiple directions. But if we can coordinate our approach... He started sketching on the tactical map. Vlix, your stealth abilities could let you scout the area first and identify threats. Thok could create a distraction while Kessatar and Ben moved to flanking positions. I could coordinate from the high ground and call out enemy movements. Kessatar looked skeptical. That's a lot of coordination for a species that can't even share thoughts. Humans have other ways of communicating during combat, Jake said. Hand signals, radio protocols, pre-planned responses to common situations. This might actually work, Thok said slowly, but it requires everyone to trust the plan and stick to their roles. I'm willing to try, Vlix said. I've never been part of a real team before. The exercise began with their squad moving carefully through the simulation area. Jake took position on the high ground objective, while the others moved toward their first target in the alley. From his elevated position, Jake could see the entire battlefield. He watched as automated defense drones emerged from hidden positions to engage his teammates. More importantly, he could see Squad 3 approaching from the east, trying to flank their position. Kessatar, you have enemies approaching from your 2 o'clock, Jake said into his communicator. 3 contacts, moving fast. I see them, Kessatar replied. For once, his voice held no contempt for human input. Jake watched as his squad executed their planned moves. Thok positioned himself in the narrow alley where his massive frame could block the entire passage. Vlix used stealth to scout ahead and identify threats before they became dangerous. Ben and Kessatar worked together to clear defensive positions. Squad 5 is moving on the plaza, Jake reported. Vlix, can you get there first and provide intelligence? Already moving, Vlix replied, and Jake could see the Nexari's shadowy form darting between buildings. The coordination was not perfect. There were miscommunications and timing errors. But gradually the squad began working more smoothly together. Have visual on Squad 5, Vlix reported. 4 members, setting up defensive positions around the plaza. The 5th is missing. Probably trying to flank us, Jake said, scanning the area from his elevated position. Ben, watch your back. The next few minutes were chaotic. Multiple squads converged on the objectives simultaneously. Automated defenses activated throughout the area. Individual combat skills mattered, but teamwork mattered more. Jake found himself naturally taking on a coordination role, calling out enemy positions and suggesting tactical adjustments in real time. His teammates began responding to his directions without questioning them. Thok, Squad 2 is trying to overwhelm your position with numbers. Fall back to secondary defensive position. Kessatar, the plaza is clear if you can get there in the next 30 seconds. Vlix, excellent work on those reconnaissance reports. Can you provide overwatch for Ben's advance? When the exercise ended, Squad 7 had successfully captured and held all 3 objectives. They were not the only squad to succeed, but they had done it with fewer casualties and better coordination than most others. Interesting performance, Master Sergeant Gray said during the debrief. Squad 7 showed significant improvement in tactical coordination as the exercise progressed. The humans kept getting better at calling out enemy positions, Kessatar admitted reluctantly. By the end, I was reacting to their warnings before I even saw the threats myself. And their planning was very detailed, Thok added. They thought through problems I hadn't even considered. Vlix nodded enthusiastically. I've never felt like such an important part of a team before. Usually, I just try to stay out of everyone's way, but they found ways to use my abilities effectively. Stir? Sergeant Gray made notes on her tablet. Human military doctrine emphasizes force multiplication through teamwork. Individual capabilities matter less than how well those capabilities are coordinated and employed. Over the following days, Squad 7 continued training together. Each exercise went more smoothly than the last. Jake and Ben naturally took on planning and coordination roles, while their alien squad mates learned to trust human tactical thinking. You know what's strange? Kessatar said after a particularly successful urban assault exercise. I'm actually A better fighter when I'm following your tactical suggestions than when I'm just relying on my natural speed. Same here, Thok agreed. Having someone coordinate my movements lets me focus all my strength on the actual fighting instead of trying to figure out where to go next. It's like having a shared consciousness, Vlix said, but one that can adapt and change plans in real time. Jake felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with physical exertion. For the first time since arriving at the academy, he felt like he was truly contributing something valuable. I think we're starting to understand what humans bring to combat, Ben said that evening as they reviewed their training scores. What's that? Jake asked. We make everyone else better. Individually, we might be weak, but we can turn any group into a real team. Jake looked at their squad's performance ratings. They were now consistently scoring in the top tier for team exercises, despite having started with some of the weakest individual fighters. The announcement came during morning assembly. Commander Vex stood before the assembled cadets with what might have been satisfaction on his reptilian features. Your final combat training exercise begins tomorrow, he announced. 7 days on. The planet Korvax Prime. Survival conditions, live ammunition, real consequences. A murmur of excitement ran through the alien cadets. This was what they had been training for. Actual combat conditions, not simulations. Each squad will be dropped at different locations on the planet's surface, Commander Vex continued. Your mission is to survive environmental hazards, complete 3 tactical objectives, and reach the extraction point. You will face automated defense systems, hostile wildlife, and opposition from other squads. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Real combat, real weapons, real danger. Squads that fail to reach extraction will remain on planet until they complete their objectives or until emergency rescue becomes necessary, Commander Vex added. This is your final test. Pass and you graduate to advanced training. Fail and you repeat the entire combat program. After the assembly, Squad 7 gathered in their planning room. The atmosphere was tense. Even Kessatar seemed nervous about the upcoming challenge. 7 days, Thok said, studying the mission briefing. That's a long time to survive on a hostile planet. Look at these environmental conditions, Vlix added, reading from her tablet. Extreme temperature swings, toxic atmosphere in some areas, predatory wildlife rated as extremely dangerous. Ben spread out the tactical maps they had been given. And we have to complete 3 separate objectives while dealing with all that. Jake studied the mission parameters carefully. The first objective was to establish a secure base camp and maintain it for 48 hours. The second was to conduct reconnaissance on a series of enemy installations and gather intelligence. The third was to assault and capture a fortified position defended by automated systems. This is designed to test everything we've learned, Jake said. Individual survival, skills, team coordination, tactical planning, and direct combat. The other squads will have advantages we don't, Kessatar pointed out. Granite warriors won't be affected by extreme temperatures. Zephyrians can cover ground much faster than we can. Hive-born squads will coordinate perfectly without any communication. Delays. And Nexari squads will be nearly invisible to the automated defenses, Vlix added quietly. Jake felt the familiar weight of human limitations. In pure survival conditions, every other species would have natural advantages that humans simply lacked. So we need to be smarter, he said finally. We can't outrun, outfight, or out-tough the other squads. But maybe we can outplan them. They spent the next several hours developing detailed plans for each phase of the mission. Jake found himself naturally taking the lead in strategic planning, while Ben focused on logistics and resource management. For the base camp, Jake said, we need a location that provides natural defenses but also access to resources, somewhere the other squads might overlook. The environmental data shows several cave systems, Ben noted. Natural shelter from temperature extremes and weather, defensible positions. But caves could become traps if we're discovered, Kestar warned. Not if we prepare multiple escape routes, Jake replied, and we establish supply caches in advance. They planned contingencies for dozens of possible scenarios. What if they encountered hostile wildlife? What if another squad attacked their base? What if the automated defenses proved stronger than expected? Most squads will probably rely on their natural abilities and improvise, Vlix observed. We're the only ones planning this extensively. That's because most squads have natural gifts to fall back on, Jake said. We only have our planning. The morning of deployment arrived gray and cold. Squad 7 stood in the shuttle bay with their equipment and supplies. Around them, other squads made final preparations. Jake noticed that most alien squads carried minimal equipment. Granite warriors relied on their natural durability. Zephyrians counted on speed and agility. Hive-born squads moved with perfect coordination but little individual gear. Squad 7, by contrast, carried extensive supplies, detailed maps, communication equipment, medical supplies, emergency rations, environmental protection gear, and backup plans for everything. You look like you're planning to stay for a month, Kessatar from Squad 2 commented as he passed by. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it, Jake replied. The shuttle ride to the planet's surface was tense and quiet. Through the viewports, Jake could see Korvax Prime below, a harsh world of rocky terrain, violent weather systems, and sparse vegetation. Their insertion point was a rocky plateau surrounded by rough terrain. As the shuttle lifted off, leaving them alone on the hostile planet, Jake felt the full weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Base camp first, he said, consulting his portable scanner. There's a cave system 2 kilometers north that should provide good shelter. The trek to the caves was harder than expected. The thin atmosphere made breathing difficult. The rocky terrain was treacherous underfoot. Within an hour, all 5 squad members were breathing hard and struggling with the harsh conditions. But their preparation paid off. Jake had studied the environmental data extensively and knew which routes would be safest. Ben had calculated their energy expenditure and planned rest stops accordingly. By evening, they had established a secure base camp in a cave system that provided natural defenses and multiple escape routes. Phase 1 complete, Ben said, checking their timeline. We're actually ahead of schedule. The next 2 days tested their endurance and teamwork. The automated defense systems that patrolled the area were more sophisticated than expected. Hostile wildlife proved to be a constant threat. Temperature swings between day and night were extreme enough to be dangerous. But Squad 7 adapted. When the automated systems proved too advanced for direct confrontation, they used stealth and misdirection to avoid them. When hostile creatures threatened their base camp, they used coordinated tactics to drive them off. When environmental conditions became extreme, they had the equipment and planning to survive. I'm getting intelligence reports from the other squads, Vlix said on the 3rd day, using her natural stealth abilities to scout the area. Squad 2 has already lost a member to hostile wildlife. Squad 5 is struggling with the environmental conditions. What about Squad 3? Jake asked. They were the hive-born squad with perfect coordination. They're doing well tactically, but they seem to be having supply problems. I don't think they planned for extended operations. Jake felt a strange mixture of concern and satisfaction. He was worried about the other cadets' safety, but pleased that Squad 7's extensive planning was proving effective. The reconnaissance phase required them to gather intelligence on 3 separate enemy installations. This meant covering a lot of ground while avoiding detection by automated sentries and rival squads. We split into 2 teams, Jake decided. Vlix and I will scout the northern installations. Kessitar, Thok, and Ben will take the southern ones. We maintain regular communication and rendezvous here each evening. The reconnaissance went better than expected. Vlix's stealth abilities combined with Jake's tactical analysis proved highly effective. They gathered detailed intelligence on enemy positions, defensive systems, and patrol patterns. When they regrouped with the rest of their squad, Kessitar reported similar success. "Your planning is incredible," he told Jake. "You predicted exactly where the automated sentries would be positioned and how to avoid them." "It's just pattern analysis," Jake replied. "Defense systems follow logical principles. Once you understand the principles, you can predict the patterns." The final phase was the most dangerous. A direct assault on a fortified enemy position. The target was a hilltop installation defended by automated weapons systems and protected by multiple layers of barriers. Other squads had already attempted to assault the position. Squad 2 had been repelled with casualties. Squad 5 had retreated after determining the defenses were too strong. Squad 3 was still planning their approach. "Direct assault won't work," Jake said, studying the intelligence they had gathered. "The automated defenses are designed to handle that kind of attack." "Then how do we capture it?" Thok asked. "We don't capture it," Jake said with a smile. "We turn it off." His plan was complex and risky. Instead of attacking the installation directly, they would infiltrate the power and communication systems that supported it. Vlix would use stealth to access the facility's technical areas. Ben would disable the power systems. Kessitar would provide rapid response if they were discovered. Thok would serve as their extraction route if things went wrong. Jake would coordinate the entire operation from an overwatch position. "This is either brilliant or insane," Vlix said after Jake explained the plan. "Probably both," Jake admitted. "But it's our best chance." The assault began before dawn on the 7th day. Everything had to be timed perfectly. Vlix infiltrated the facility and located the power systems. Ben prepared the technical equipment needed to shut down the automated defenses. Kessitar positioned himself to intercept any response forces. "Power systems located," Vlix whispered into her communicator. "Beginning infiltration." Jake watched from his overwatch position as his teammates executed. The graduation ceremony was held in the main assembly hall of the Stellar Dawn. Representatives from military academies across the galaxy had come to observe the ceremony and evaluate potential recruits for advanced programs. Jake stood with his fellow cadets, wearing the formal uniform that marked him as a graduate of the Interstellar Defense Corps Basic Training Program. 6 months ago, he had arrived on this ship as a curiosity, a representative of a species so weak that most aliens questioned why humans had been included in the program at all. Now, things were different. Commander Vex approached the podium with his usual commanding presence. His yellow eyes scanned the assembled cadets before settling on the human section. "Cadets," he began, "you have completed the most challenging basic military training program in the galaxy. You have proven yourselves capable of operating in mixed-species units under extreme conditions." Applause echoed through the hall from the assembled instructors and observers. "During your time here,